Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Nisha this side. Today in this video, I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know about gouache paints to get started. I was introduced to the gouache paints about 2 years ago via YouTube and my interest was naturally piqued, so I ordered a pack for myself and started experimenting with it quite a lot. I'm going to share everything that I've learned so far in this video so that you don't have to repeat the same mistakes that I did and you have a smoother experience while working with gouache paints. So let's first talk about what is gouache. Gouache is basically opaque watercolor. You can think of it as acrylics coverage and you mix it with watercolor's reactivation property. Depending on how much water you add, you can go from very opaque to a very transparent finish. And it dries to a beautiful matte finish that photographs like a dream and scans perfectly for prints. I use two kinds of gouache, one which comes into these little cups and the other ones which are in tubes. The cup set that I have is from Himi Mia. I started with it for two reasons. One, it sure looks ridiculously cute, and two, when it dries, you can actually reactivate right in the container with a spray of water. I mist mine occasionally to just keep them fresh all the time. I also have these tube gouache from Brustro as brand, and the color selection is great, but if it dries in the tube, it can almost be impossible to just rescue them. So my suggestion, if you're just starting out with the gouache, I would suggest that you go for the cups so that you don't have to necessarily worry about your paints getting dried and reviving them later. Let's try swatching some colors. The materials that I need for this is gouache colors. Here I'm going to use both of my gouache paints, the tube ones and the cup ones. A watercolor paper that can hold enough water and the layer of colors. A brush, you can use mixed media or synthetic brush, whichever you have. In this exercise, I'm gonna swatch the same color 3 times. Every time I move forward, I'm gonna add more water to it. So the first swatch is going to be with minimum or no water. The second swatch is going to be somewhat medium amount of water, and the third swatch is going to be with a lot of water to see how the paint behaves when mixed with different amount of water. And as you can see, the more you add water, the more transparency you get, the more opaqueness is gone. This information is not necessarily a good news or a bad news. You can use this information to your advantage based on what kind of texture or look you're trying to achieve in your paintings. Let's go back to the fact that gouache can be reactivated, and surprise, that can not only happen in the container or the tube but can also happen on the paper as well. So here I have taken a watercolor paper and I have divided it into two parts. In the first section, I'm going to have the underneath layer with a very thin and transparent layer of gouache. Here I have used the lemon yellow as a color. And then for the second section, I'm going to have a very thick layer of paint. For that, I'm going to use ultramarine. And two things we are going to check here. One is how the reactivation of the paint happens. If the underneath paint is either thin or thick, as in how much water was added to that layer. Second, how the paint acts when it is layered on a certain pigment. How the darker paint acts if it is layered on a lighter pigment of a color, and how a light pigment of a color acts if it is layered on top of a dark pigment. Now that both of my sections are ready, I also dried them. Here I am taking a red color and I am going from a very thin layer to a very opaque layer to see if any activation will happen. And as you can see, since the underneath layer is very thin, there is no pigment as such for the reactivation. So we are kind of safe. Versus if we do the same activity on this other section where the underneath layer has a very thick pigment, in that case you can see that the chances of activation is pretty high. In the last exercise, I am trying to gonna see if we can use this information of activation of paint to our advantage. So what I've done here, I have put boxes of the paint of the pigment on both the sections to see can I activate the paint and create or achieve a smudge look for the edges of the boxes of the pigment that I've put. It's very obvious to conclude that the more pigment is there, the easier to create that smudge look is. I've used this information in this painting where I have tried to create clouds by reactivating the underneath layer and having or achieving a smudge look. In the last exercise, I made sure that both the background colors were dried up. But what if we try to layer pigments when the underneath layer is still wet? Well, the pigments will behave very similar to how watercolors do. This is all the information that you need in order to get started with gouache. I would suggest that you go back and try to do these exercises yourself in order to understand how these gouache paints behave and have a first hand experience. In the upcoming videos, I will teach you how to use these techniques to create these beautiful landscapes. And yes, that is it for this video. I hope the video was helpful to you. If it was, do not forget to comment on the video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like, share, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.